Local stories, local people. We're taking you inside Western Mass news. It's the Even Better Western Mass podcast with Dave Madsen.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Wherever you are, hope you're doing well. This week, we focus on the Professional Women's Chamber of Western Mass and its 2020 Woman of the Year. The Professional Women's Chamber is part of the Springfield Regional Chamber. It's been around since 1953. Their goals include increasing leadership development and networking opportunities for women in business. My guests are Gillian Amaral, the president of the Professional Women's Chamber, and Beth Cardillo, the executive director of Armbrook Village and the 2020 Woman of the Year. All right. Ladies, thanks for joining me for this edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. I hope you're doing well. Gillian, let's first talk about, I think, to kick things off, is the Professional Women's Chamber, the Chamber's mission, how it was founded, and how you're dealing with COVID-19.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm happy to be here and happy to share the mission of the Professional Women's Chamber, which started in 1953. So we've been going strong for 67 years now. And our mission is to promote the status of professional women. We work to empower career-oriented women through the participation in leadership, education, and networking opportunities. And we've also strived to strengthen the positive impact of women in the business community and on the economy. So we've been staying true to that mission throughout this year with the impact of COVID-19 and offering that to our professional women.
Now, each and every year you present an award to a Woman of the Year award, and Beth is the recipient of that this year. Beth, congratulations, first of all.
Thank you so much.
And Gillian, let's talk about how you came about picking Beth for that award.
Well, so this is our 66th Women of the Year award, and we go through a nomination process. It's a blind nomination process where we have a group of individuals look through the nominees and pick who they think should be awarded with this prestigious award. And it was basically 100% unanimous for Beth. She was chosen based on her nomination and just the impact that she has to our community. And honestly, I couldn't imagine anyone else being honored for our award this year. And I'm happy to be here to help her and through this process and honor her through our Women of the Year award.
Beth, congratulations.
Thank you, Gillian. I can't be any more flattered and in gratitude to everybody.
Well, you've earned it. I mean, it's based on everything that you have done and the impact that you have made. So we are honored to honor you.
Beth, you're the executive director at Armbrook Village. Tell us a little about your role there.
Sure. So Armbrook Village is a retirement community for people for independent living, assisted living, and memory care. So I just celebrated my 8th anniversary here. So I started, we opened up 6 months after I got there. So I've been here since the beginning. We are part of our company called Senior Living Residences, which has 18 other communities in the state, though we're the only ones in the western part. I'm very honored to work with senior living residents because they are full of compassion and integrity. And it's been an absolute phenomenal job. I could have retired years ago because I am no spring chicken, but I continue to work. I love working. I love the chance to, being an innovator. I was the founder of the Dementia Friendly Movement for the state of Massachusetts. And I started that as just a small thing for our own community in Westfield. And somehow it took off, and now it's a state incentive by the Mass Council on Aging. So I'm very lucky that I get to be a part of the community with Armbrook. So we may be a building in the community of Westfield, but we are part of Westfield, and we are part of the bigger picture of it all. You have to be a part of the community.
Activism is part of who you are. I know in reading your biography too, that your mom and dad were both very active.
You may have known my dad, Dave, Sidney Edelberg. He was the manager editor of the Springfield Herald. Do you remember that?
I do.
It was the old shopping news.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think he taught me two things, and that is the importance of integrity and principles. And I'm going to tell you, I watched him when we first moved to Massachusetts from New York City. He became a bigger fish in a smaller pond, and he wrote a lot of stories about police brutality in Springfield. This was in the mid 60s. He helped close Buckingham School down. He started Marathon House, which was then the first house for heroin addiction in Springfield. And he was a man of integrity, and he didn't back down. And he ultimately lost his job because he became too political for Springfield. The owners of the paper were actually Steigers and Forbes and Wallace, and they said, stick with the shopping stuff. And he was a political activist. And that integrity has been a value for me all my life. And I continue to fight the good fight. So it's been, for right now, for me, it's all about Alzheimer's and dementia, educating what I can about dementia, erasing the stigma of dementia. But it's all about not backing down when people say you can't do this or whatever. Of course you can. And that has just remained ingrained with me probably since the day I was born.
Now, how did your path take you on a career to elder care?
Purely by accident. You know, some people plan their lives, and I just take risks. I worked for years. I worked with Easter Seals years ago, and worked with, as a young social worker, worked with people with traumatic brain injury. And I helped develop supported employment for young adults that had brain injuries. And somehow after doing that for many, many years, I was offered a job at a retirement community in Longmeadow. And I said it was time to start something new. Obviously, I really enjoy learning about the brain. So I went from traumatic brain injury to working with people with Alzheimer's. So I think I've just been in the right time, the right place. I have a master's in education and counseling, and I'm a licensed social worker. So I took a job I knew nothing about, and managed to do it well.
Gillian, obviously Beth is a model to other businesswomen here in Western Massachusetts by what she's done.
Yes, definitely. I would agree. Just listening to your story is inspirational, because I always tell my students that, you know, there's not a right path that you need to take. You know, sometimes your roadmap will take you in and out of different careers and different aspirations, and that's okay. And I think that you are the epitome of showing that it's okay to take a risk. It's okay to do something different and see what happens. And you've done wonderful work of that. And I just think it's truly inspirational to hear your story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there are people that say I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. And I think taking a risk is a good thing. And I also want to say, as a female, we have to support each other. And I think that there have been important mentors in my life that have kind of helped me get through this process of life, right? And different jobs, different occupations, and what we do. And they've been strong business people in the Springfield area.
Gillian, the Professional Women's Chamber has been around since 1953. I mean, starting in a time where you didn't see a lot of women in the business world.
Right, exactly. So, you know, we decided to make a change, that a change was needed. And this organization really, I think, created a breakthrough in regards to providing opportunities for women to launch in professional organizations. And we haven't stopped. You know, we provide networking opportunities, educational opportunities, and we also have our scholarship fund, which we started in 1965. so 55 years ago. And we've awarded about over $80,000 of scholarship money to women re-entering the workforce. Those women who had to take a break and who've said, I want to make a change in my life. So we've awarded this scholarship money to them to help them make those changes and continue to make the impact in the community.
And this whole COVID-19 situation for us too, is I'm sure presented even greater challenges for both men and women who are professionals in business too, given the fact that many of them with children now have those children at home and are trying to balance both worlds.
Oh, yes, definitely. There's a fine line now that you have to play with the role of being a professional and also taking on the role of being a teacher and a caretaker sometimes as well. So we try to just be a beacon of support to women in the community by, just posting positive, uplifting information about different aspects and areas that women can find resources throughout this time.
I guess a time too where you need that support more than ever.
Yes, agreed.
Beth, Beth, go ahead.
I was going to say, you talk about COVID and working with other women in where I work, it's primarily female, right? Who are we do have some male nurses aides, but it's predominantly female. We were very, very glad that we were able to offer time and a half to our hourly staff and try to help them get through this. Whatever it is that we can do. Now we're having discussions about what do you do when you have a sick kid and they've got to do remote learning? Do we have a separate room set up at work? Somebody can bring their kid to work and have them do the remote learning from here. I think we all have a responsibility to be creative and do what we can for everybody.
This seems to be, at least from where we stand right now, our reality for God knows how long, I guess, until there is a vaccine and beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been crazy. And I can tell you at Armbrook Village, when COVID first started, yes, we did have some positive cases. So talk about trying to really fight your way through a system or understand the system. Initially when COVID started, there were certain set of symptoms that people were looking for, right? High fever and respiratory issues. And we found out that our seniors were manifesting different symptoms and hospitals weren't taking them in because they didn't have a fever. They didn't have a respiratory problem. They had vertigo, they had gastro issues, they were fainting, they had a host of other symptoms. And we were really, when they said we can't take them in and we're seeing a change in people's health status, we called Bay State. We spoke to the vice president of Bay State and the president Noble, and they came in with a team of infectious disease doctors and evaluated our residents. And they said, yeah, they do have COVID and they do have different symptoms. So I fought like hell to make that happen. And I think from that, they recognized that, and we didn't know what we didn't know in the beginning. Nobody's fault. Nobody had enough information, even the doctors. And I think that they learned, okay, people are having different symptoms. And if I had just accepted that at face value, I don't know what the outcome would have been. So we were able to get all of our folks where they needed to go. But it was scary.
Beth, let's talk about that. It's my son's in the same kind of business down in Florida. The challenges you faced, as we started 2020, we were looking ahead to a good year. We know an election year, but never expecting this to just shift really the way everyone does business, but especially someone in your position.
Yeah, it was crazy. I can't even begin to tell you what it was like. We had a town hall meeting with all of our families months afterwards, and I don't think they even realized what we were going through. We were lucky we were able to get PPE, and Massachusetts emergency management was wonderful. I was driving around at night picking up face masks from people that were making them and calling me up and say, all right, lawyers that I know, all right, I'm going to leave them in a plastic bag in my garden in front of the house. It'll be under a rock. And there I was driving to Holyoke to someone's house, getting face masks, going to another person's house. So we always had hundreds of face masks available for residents. We were always wearing the surgical ones, but when you're dealing with people with dementia, it's pretty difficult to say you got to keep your mask on. Or, let's talk about, and I'm sure your son had this experience, what this isolation was like. The isolation for some people was worse than the disease. We saw a change in cognitive, we saw a decline for people cognitively. We saw a change in their balance and their gait because they weren't getting outside. They weren't talking to people. We were delivering meals to them. Do you know how lonely that was? They couldn't see their families. Thank God we had Zoom calls, but families had to rely on us to be that conduit. I would never want to go through this again, ever, ever, ever. We held hands with people. I can't even explain it. It was the worst. It also brought out the best. And everybody worked very hard. Everybody did double shifts. We were working 12-hour days. You just did what you had to do. And you couldn't even stop to think about what you were doing. You were just in action mode. We all fell apart afterwards. We're actually going to be doing a little memorial service with our staff in the next 2 weeks, now that enough time has passed, to talk about what their feelings are, what they went through. Yes, we lost a few people, and we really probably haven't even processed that as well as we should have. And now we feel like we have the time to be able to say, what are our memories? What did happen? It was a sad time.
Well, I think the other part of it too, when you say, obviously families couldn't visit their loved ones, that you and your staff became the immediate family for these folks.
We sure did. We sure did. And, we did everything we can. And I think one of the things, the idea of having open communication and having that often, I called every single family member to check with them. How are you doing? What do you want us to do? What can I do for you? People were hurting. It had just affected everybody and staff. I mean, all of us, it was crazy.
Well, you do. I think it's with anything. You kind of in an adrenaline mode, so you do what you have to do. But and then, as you say now, dealing with everything else. And I think this to me, is a big part of COVID-19 is what happens now, because
Right.
we were all on that mode for so long and still are.
Right. Absolutely. And we don't know what's going to happen. Everyone's talking about the second wave. I'm praying that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's our job to educate people.
Mhm.
It's crazy. We just did a CEU program that I'll be presenting at the Mass Council on Aging at their regional virtual conference on the after effects of COVID and what it did for seniors and what it's going to look like. And there are people that are still suffering the effects of COVID, and it was interesting because everyone said, oh, it wasn't going to affect young people. Young people got all sorts of stuff going on, blood clots and strokes from younger people, and older people, different sets of symptoms and whatever. And we're going to have to manage all of that.
Gillian, let's talk about as far as the unknown in the business community itself, and women and men in business. I mean, the way it's affecting all of us, and the fact that we've changed our business model in so many ways, and how do we proceed?
Well, I think, based on what we're going through right now and the uncertainty of what the future holds, it is important now more than ever for all of us to just reach out to our community members, and to keep that communication open. Like you said, Beth, we can't go through this alone. So we have to reach out to each other, and figure out how we can collectively come up with a solution to manage this process, to manage this unknown situation that none of us have experienced before. And I think it's also an important time for businesses to be innovative and start to pivot and think a little differently about how they conduct business. We can't sort of use the same business model that we've used for the past. We have to now think differently. And I think collectively as a group and as a community, we can work through this together.
I always find it interesting too that when this first hit in March, how businesses, no matter what kind of business they were, completely changed their business model within a matter of days and weeks to adapt to the new reality.
Mhm. It was necessary. I think businesses found that if they were to continue with sort of doing the norm of what they were used to, that they wouldn't survive. So you're finding that, businesses are thinking outside of the box and coming up with these new wonderful ideas that, quite frankly, some of them can continue once we move past this situation with COVID, because they found a new sort of exciting way of creating business in their organization that they really didn't think about. So I could say one great thing that probably has come from this pandemic is that it's pushing businesses to think of just fun and innovative ways of attracting new customers, keeping their current customers and drawing in a different stream of revenue.
I think
And
part of
I
that,
think
yeah. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think from a medical point of view, I think telemed just changed everything in terms of how they're going to use doctor visits now.
Mhm.
It is so much more cost effective when it can be done properly.
Mhm.
It's amazing. And I think a lot of people have adapted to systems now that are going to continue that way. Who would have thought, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's so seamless, I actually used the telehealth. I think it was in April of this year, and it was a seamless process. The doctor phoned me back in 5 minutes. I had a conversation and we were all set, all in the comfort of my home. So I think it's definitely changing the way business will be done.
And that was an hour and a half. It would have been out of your day to
Oh,
drive
yeah.
where you needed to get to wait in the waiting room, go
Mhm.
back to work or wherever. And it took, 10 minutes.
Right. Exactly.
So it is good to look at, there are some pluses coming out of all this, that in a time where we don't see too many of them. We'll probably learn more about those in the months ahead.
Mhm.
And I think families that don't live near each other, we could have done Zoom probably 5 years ago. I don't even know
Right.
how long Zoom's been around. I wish I owned stock in it. But, families, I meet with my sister and my cousins every week, and we would have never done that. So I think people have become closer. We do an Alzheimer's support group once a month, and we were doing it in our building with a light dinner, and it was for family members, not from Armbrook Village, some from Armbrook Village, but just from the community at large. And now we're doing it through Zoom. Now we have family members that live in California, that live in Chicago, and they're joining. So now we have a whole entire families on these calls, on our support group, and that has been phenomenal. And I think we may keep doing it that way. Maybe we'll do 1 month live and 1 month through Zoom, because it's a chance to get all families involved. So that's a positive. I think families just in general have gotten closer, and friends through this.
Yeah, as we
Mhm.
look back on the last 6 or 7 months with all of this, I think if anything else, it's been really for all of us a reality check.
Mhm.
Yeah, you look at what's important and what's not, right? It's always life. It's going to be life before COVID, BC and AC, before COVID and after COVID, or during COVID,
Yeah.
because life will never be the same, probably.
And Gillian,
Right.
that's in all aspects of business, isn't it?
Oh, it is definitely. I think in all aspects of business and in our personal lives, that it just will not be the same, and we have to make sure we focus on what's important and have that balance and create that balance. I think throughout this process, we have really curated that work-life balance. And it's shown us what is really important, and to focus on those that are dear to us. And we can do that now, even if they're not down the street. We can get on the Zoom, like Beth said, and get together and fellowship. So it's really good.
And that will also change the way that Beth receives her award this year from the Professional Women's Chamber, won't it?
It will. And we're excited that we still have the opportunity to celebrate Beth, albeit a virtual method. We will be celebrating her virtually on Thursday, October 15th at 6 p.m. on Facebook Live. So it will be on our Professional Women's Chamber Facebook Live page and also on YouTube. And we couldn't do this without our event and media team, Rise Event Production and Chick Media. They're putting together a great program where we'll be able to celebrate Beth and give her the accolades that she deserves.
Well, Beth and Gillian, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me today, and both of you for all of you do, all that you do, in getting us through a tough time, but looking ahead to brighter days. My thanks to Gillian Amaral and Beth Cardillo for being my guests on this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. To learn more, you can visit professionalwomen'schamber.com. I'm Dave Madsen. Thanks for watching or listening to this week's edition of the Even Better Western Mass podcast. Stay safe, stay well, and if you can, join me next week.